If you're trying to find any type of freedom, this episode is definitely for you. This episode is very different in the sense that we are going to talk about qualified retirement plans for financial freedom. But Justin Palmore from eQRP is also a minister. And so he is bringing in a ton of faith as well. What I like about it is that I was asking him some questions that I think some of you are going to have, some of the contrarian questions about Christianity, about faith, and I think that some of his responses will surprise you. So this conversation about freedom is quite a bit different than a lot of our podcast episodes, but I think that you're going to find it an episode that will make you think and reevaluate how you are choosing to live your life and what would ground your life quite a bit more. Thanks for listening, and now to our featured guest. Hey guys, welcome back to Ask Me How I Know. I am so glad that you are here for another fantastic episode. And today's guest is actually, I already have like the most exceptional guests that I believe are the most awesome people, but today is extra, extra special. It's one of those where I can sit here with my coffee and cream and feel really just like, I feel like we're at home right now. So Justin, I just want to say thanks for being a friend and thanks for coming on to Ask Me How I Know.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Julie.
So Justin, we should tell the story about how did we even meet each other? It's a fun story.
Yeah. So I met Julie through, obviously, I work with Damian Lupo with the eQRP. Somehow I came across her name. She attended an event that we were at, and I'm a trained and licensed pastor, and I came across her name as being, a possible prospect for, our business. And I found out she was a believer and a Christian, and that she was an author. And I went to her website and I was like, oh my gosh, she's freaking awesome. And I try to surround myself with people that are just amazing people, but also have hearts of gold. And it was evident from day one that Julie had a heart of gold. So we just, when I called about the eQRP, we actually talked more about our faith and her writing and her history, way more than we did about any kind of business. And so it was an honor and a privilege to meet a fellow believer in a space that not only loved the Lord, but also loved people. And I think that's very special.
It was really cool. And what to carry that on, that was such like a cool connecting point right there. And I love it when you have people that are excellent at what they do and they are also living out their faith and shining stars in that way. So it was so such a happy moment. Then my husband and I went down to a seminar down in Dallas, a real estate guy seminar. And I remember just like, oh my gosh, I saw on the itinerary that, the eQRP crew was going to be there. And I'm thinking, I started sending you guys emails like, oh my gosh, we have to meet. I want to meet you guys in person.
It was crazy because we were all sitting down in the lobby and we knew that you and Steve were going to be there. And I particularly, really wanted to meet you just because, we had a connection and we talked and we'd already, talked on the phone. And so I walked up to a couple different, girls that actually looked like you with blonde hair and said, "Hey, Julie," and it were not you. And so, but then you and Steve came down, and Steve had his awesome hat on, where he looked like a Peaky Blinder, or somebody from London and back in the 1800s. And I was like, "That's them." And so we all got to hug back when hugs were allowed. And pre-pandemic, and that was just an amazing opportunity to just meet you in person and actually see your faiths lived out, in person and in the flesh. It was pretty awesome. So
it's really exciting, and a lot of people are going to experience that post-pandemic when things kind of settle down and all these relationships that people have formed through the pandemic. I have met a slew of people that I consider good friends now, but I've never met them in person. So I cannot wait for everything to open up. And guess what? We still hug in North Idaho.
awesome.
That's how North Idaho rolls, We're just kind of like, well, we'll still hug.
you have to catch yourself because I'm such a hugger. I just I love people, and so I'm a hugger and I have to catch myself because I'm like, oh my gosh, it's the pandemic. Like, people freak out now, and it's really once this all passes, it is like you said, it's going to be very interesting to see how the world just kind of claims back sociology and really kind of claws our way back to some type of normalcy because we don't know what normalcy is right now.
That's so weird. I will tell you this. I was already a little slightly opposed to handshakes prior to the pandemic. Just don't get me wrong. How many times do you see somebody like kind of just wipe
Oh
something
yeah.
off their face or their nose or whatever? I'm like, so pre-pandemic, and I'm not a germaphobe at all, but I'm like, if I didn't do handshakes, I'd be cool with that. But I'll take like hugs. It's like, oh, you're actually not touching anybody, really. It's a different thing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, this is so fun. So, what are you up to? What are you trying? What are you pursuing in life?
Yeah. Honestly, Julia, it's a great question. I wake up every morning thinking about, how can I represent, Christ in everything that I do. That's first and foremost. I mean, Francis Chan really lays it out really well in terms of how we should prioritize our life as believers. You've got your life with Christ, your relationship with Christ way up here, and then like down here you got family, and then way down here you got work. And he actually gives us really good example in You and Me Forever. It's a marriage book. I highly recommend that for anybody who's married out there. But he said, ask anybody in the coffee shop what their main priorities in life are, and every single person will say, oh, God, family, friends, work. Like every single person will say the exact same thing. And I actually did that at a coffee shop as an experiment, as I was leading this couple through premarital counseling. And Francis actually says, you know, everything's way too close. It should be relationship with God, and then way on down here everything else. And so, while my why is, I'm driven by just to represent Christ in everything that I do. My family is definitely a driver for me. I've got 3 kids, 7, 3, and 1, and my beautiful wife. I do everything for them in order for them to have the opportunities that I didn't have growing up, and to be able to experience financial freedom, and what that looks like for them is just having choices and opportunities that I didn't necessarily have growing up. And it wasn't my parents at all. My neither one of my parents went to college, and they had to start working directly out of high school. And so I learned the lessons of hard work and grit and living from week to week on a paycheck very early on in life. And so I know the value of the dollar. And so it's my goal every single day to instill the lessons of first and foremost a relationship with Christ, and live that out to my kids, but also to instill the lessons of hard work, determination, grit, perseverance, just so that they can live a life of freedom. So,
You can't have that life without any of those things. If you don't have faith, you kind of don't have an anchor or rudder, and you get a little bit swayed here and there. And if you don't have those character traits, how can you possibly go any further, right?
exactly.
Because those are what carry you. We're working tenaciously to instill those traits into our own kids, because like, you're going to get eaten alive.
Yeah.
You're going to get fired. In fact, I fired my son the other day. I said, here's the thing. If you were my employee and we were working at, the local coffee shop or whatever, and that's how you did your work, your hours are about ready to get cut. And pretty soon you're not going to be working for me. And that's reality. So you better figure it out now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I just think that the world's a tough place, and it's tougher right now than it was when we were growing up, and it's just going to continue to be tougher, particularly on believers and on people who really hold Jesus as their number one priority in life. And I just feel like some days, I worry about my kids' future, but the ultimate thing that I lean back on, Julie, and I know you do as well, is that God's got them. He's got them, and he's going to take care of them, and he's going to guide their path. it's just our job to get them on that path. So
Sure. Yeah, I agree with that. That keeping them on the path and everything. So some people listening, they might say like, "Well, I don't share this faith, and I'm not sure. Like, why would you say it's going to be hard? Why? Where is that coming from? Isn't that being negative? So, what are your concerns? What is it that you're seeing?
yeah, I just feel like the world is in general is kind of out for self, right? So the world is only considering themselves and not others. And I think, and I definitely do not want to come across as pressuring anybody to believe what I believe. I'm just so passionate about what I believe and in love and love Christ. But what I want you to understand is all I'm saying is when I say the world is a hard place is that everybody is out looking out for themselves right now, and there's not enough people looking out for others. And so it is a principle in my life to always the hashtag is others, hashtag others. And I want my kids to live that life out, because if you're living for other people and you're serving people and your heart is with the betterment of mankind and the betterment of the world, then positive things can happen. But if the world's all about me, and John 3:30 says, he must become greater, I must become less. If the world is all about me, then selfishness is going to just infest, and it's going to manifest in ways that are just treating people bad, or excluding people, or being mean to people, or just really not exactly being the model citizen that I believe that we are called to be. So that's what I mean. I hope
Yes,
that makes sense.
yes. Well, and for me, it totally makes sense, but I can hear, and I always try to represent the curious questions that my audience might have. And,
Absolutely.
and so my audience might say, yeah, but I thought like the Christians I know are mean, and they are, they are exclusive, and they are. So what would you say to someone that is like, golly, good for you, Justin, in your little exclusive club over there. That's not my experience.
Yeah. I would apologize to them on behalf of those claiming to be believers. There's a book by Kyle Idleman called Not a Fan, and I highly recommend anybody who is exploring the prospect of Christianity into reading that. And essentially what Kyle talks about is it's one thing to be a fan of Jesus, is a whole nother thing of being a follower of Jesus. And I think, especially here, I live in the South. I didn't really get a chance to introduce it, but I'm down here in Birmingham, Alabama, in the Bible Belt. And there's a lot of fans of Jesus. There's a lot of people in the crowd, and they're cheering for, these things that we're supposed to do. And they go to church on Sundays, they go to church on Wednesdays, and they check off all these boxes, but they don't bear any fruit. They don't live a life of love, and a love of, um, peace and kindness that Jesus calls us to. And so it's a whole different ballgame to be a follower, than to be a fan. A follower is not in the stands. A follower is down on the field, and is taking the hits, and is throwing the ball, and is going through the roller coaster of life, and actually having a relationship with Jesus. If I'm to give a better example, if I'm on an airplane, and the airplane's engine goes out and the airplane's going down, okay, there's a parachute right next to me. I can believe in that parachute all I want, and I can believe that thing is going to save me, and as long as it's sitting over there. But until I put that parachute on and actually pull the string, and let it save me, and let it change my life, and let it save my life, then that's the difference here. So there's a huge difference between saying you believe in Jesus and actually putting that faith on and living it out. So I would say to those people, I am sorry. I'm deeply sorry that Jesus has been misrepresented to you, and I would do anything in this world to tell you how much he's done for me, and what he did for me on that cross, and what he did for you on that cross, and to describe to you exactly what he did and how much he loves you. He loves you more than anybody could possibly love anybody. And Donald Miller says in first line of his book Blue Like Jazz, he was not a Christian, but when he started out his journey, but he said, I used to not like jazz, but then I saw somebody actually playing jazz, and then I started liking jazz. And so I would challenge you to find somebody who loves Jesus, and then just ask them about it. So
That's powerful. Absolutely powerful. It reminds me of this concept of like, are you interested in something or are you committed to something? And that concept of there are a lot of people that are interested in spirituality or interested in going to a church to feel good, but their commitment level is it's not a commitment in life. And most of the time, a lot of times, I shouldn't say most, oftentimes that pursuit is really a self pursuit, and it makes me feel good, so that's why I go do that instead of upward pursuit of I want to honor you, Lord, and I want to get to have this relationship. um
no,
I'll go
absolutely.
ahead.
No, I mean, absolutely. I agree. And Julie, just to piggyback on that, that's why I have such a problem with the modern day church's approach to short-term mission trips. And this is, we can go down a rabbit hole with this, but the what you see in the modern day church is you have a group of um, well-off people who will pay to go on a week-long mission trip, and they'll do um, you know, amazing stuff for a week, and they feel great about themselves, and they come back and we have a church service where we celebrate what they did, and we have a slideshow and a video. But meanwhile, there are those people that they went and ministered to are still struggling. There are the drugs that we gave, if it was a medical mission trip and we gave them anti-worm medicine for a month, the 30-day supply. After those 30 days, the worms are back. There's a reason why hundreds of wells in Africa are abandoned, and it's because we went over there and dug them and felt great and came back and did our slideshows and everything, but we didn't educate people on why that clean water tasted different. And so, but we came back and we were so happy and we felt awesome and we did a great thing. But in essence, we did worse. We had a negative impact, a net negative impact. And so it's my goal in life, and I could go down a rabbit hole in that, but it's my goal in life to always do things that are long-term, sustainable, and really relationship based. I don't want to do anything that is, touristic. I was in Haiti when the earthquake happened. A lot of disaster tourism happened down there. And by that I mean a lot of organizations, you name it, were down there, and they came down, took a lot of pictures, and left a day later. So it's just my passion in life that things like that. It's not about us. It's not about us. It's always hashtag others. Always.
I love that hashtag others. I'm going to borrow that because it's powerful. One of those things, I actually was speaking with somebody recently, and she was asking about, we were redesigning some marketing materials, and in that it led to a deeper question about like, what does 3 Keys investments mean, and what does this mean, and what does that mean? And as we discussed what all of these things, the deeper meaning of everything, I told her, I said, in all reality, I don't really like calling myself a Christian because of the negative connotation these days. I said, but I love Jesus and I'm a Jesus follower. And, that's where the heart of this comes from. Because I feel like there's this little tipping point right now where I'm not in your box over here. I'm really striving to live this life that is really like Christ-centered, that is, spreading that love around.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I love that. So this really is a great ask me how I know, because you are taking all these difficulties and these struggles, and you're like, how do I know about these things? I've seen these things, had these responses, I've interacted with these people, and I know that there's a better first. fulfillment and the satisfaction.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is really amazing. Well, what would you say if I said, how do you know how to find freedom then?
Yeah. But there's different types of freedom, in your life. I find free. So in my faith, I find freedom through Christ because he broke the chains of sin from my life. There's ways to find freedom in other aspects of life. Whether it be in business. A great book from the business world is Extreme Ownership by Jocko and Leaf. That's a great one. And that you find freedom by taking ownership over what you're doing. And that's kind of the key message through that book is it's, it's about serving people, and you can't be a leader unless you own what you do. And so I think that's a key piece to freedom. I work for the eQRP company, and what we do is we provide financial freedom to people. And what I mean by that is, it's our mission, our company mission to break financial shackles. And actually it's our mission to do 1 million financial broken shackles. And what that means is that we are trained as robots in the financial world to go to college, get a W-2 job, and get a 401k package, and let our 401k grow 5% for 40 years, and then retire and have enough money to live off of for 5 to 10 years after we retire. And that is what we're trained to do. And it's just so robotic that it's disgusting, and our company, the eQRP, what we strive to do is to break those financial shackles and to break that mindset. And so what we educate people on is there's other ways. There's other ways to invest. There's other ways to save money. There's other ways to build a nest egg. And so what we do is we have this vehicle called the Enhanced Qualified Retirement Plan, where we roll over people's 401ks, IRAs, 403bs, 457s, TSPs into this vehicle to where you can invest in real estate. You can invest in multifamily syndications. You can invest in gold. You can invest in cryptocurrency. You can invest in stocks and bonds. But it's your decision. And that's what we're trying to, as a company, to describe to people is that, hey, you have the freedom to make your own money decisions. You've been told your whole life that you don't, but you do. It's kind of, it's very actually biblical. The Bible, in biblical times, the Pharisees and Sadducees would tell people, no, you don't have freedom. The law actually, the old law from the Old Testament, is what is shackling you down to all of these, thousands of laws that were written over the years. But Jesus came to break those chains and to give people the freedom, in life, the freedom in life to pursue him, the freedom in life to serve others, the freedom in life to do all these amazing things. And I'm not at all comparing the eQRP to Jesus, because that is ridiculous. And the eQRP is Lilliputian compared to Jesus. I'm just saying that, it's our mission to break financial chains and to break financial shackles. I'm not here to sell our product. I'm here to just tell people that there's other ways to invest. And the eQRP really gives people access to those open avenues and open ways of being able to diversify and really just actually, the movie Limitless, kind of take a pill that opens up your eyes to all these other things in the world that they can invest in, instead of just, riding the roller coaster of the stock market for 40 years. That's no way to live.
It's not any way to live. Now, I happen to be a big fan of the eQRP, and I personally have one. And I'll tell you what I've really enjoyed recently is that freedom to just jump on cryptocurrency and some other opportunities that, wow, well, when it dropped down, I was able to instantly make that choice for myself. And so it provides that flexibility to be able to do what you want. But really there's another part to this, Justin, and that is people have to be engaged. People have to want something. They have to be thinking and knowing how to think about things and view things. So What do you know about that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. People ask me all the time, what's the con of the eQRP? It sounds great. Like, I love freedom. I love, the idea and the concept of, making my own decisions, but what's the con here? What's the catch? And I just say, the con is if you're not self-responsible, and if you're not a self-starter, if you're not wanting to have that control, because we can say we want freedom all we want, but until we go and take it, then that's just words. The book of James talks about, the difference between being a hearer and a doer of the word. Actually being like, a hearer of the word is nothing until you do it. And so, I just think, in order, you just have to flip your mindset. You have to, we've been ingrained for years with this economic strategy of, small growth, retirement funds, to just, retire after 40 years. Excuse my 1-year-old daughter yelling in the
You
background.
it's totally fine. It's happened before.
But we're just ingrained in this mindset, and we have to come to the point where we're like, you know what? This makes 0 sense, and I have no freedom. Other people are making money off of my money. And actually, Julie, it's funny, when people realize the actual quantitative data is 70% of what we earn in our lifetime goes to the government. We only get to keep 30% of it. 70% goes to the government.
And that's right now.
Yep.
Let's just be clear also.
Yeah.
That's with current taxes and everything, not what's coming.
70%. That means, we only have control over 30%. That's disgusting, And so if that doesn't make you want to get control over your money, and make you want to say, you know what, like, I don't want to be an index fund 5,876 or 5,876, whatever the index fund may be. I actually want to, do a real estate syndication that'll double my money in 5 years, or buy some gold as a hedge, because what's going to happen is taxes are going to be higher. The government's printing money like it's toilet paper right now, and inflation is coming. And so
I think it was 30% of the money was printed last year. I read this stat. That's terrifying.
It's terrifying. Or it's terrifying for our kids. Our kids are going to have to pay way more taxes than we are. So
yeah, it's a burden that will be, somebody is going to bear.
Absolutely.
And that is a really terrifying thing. So here's something that I've heard several people mention recently as we were discussing eQRP, like as I'm having these little side conversations.
Yeah.
And some of them have said, well, but if I do that, I can't invest in my own syndication. And that seems to be a very common concern.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can't, one of the rules of investing with your retirement money is you can't self-deal. Okay. And self-dealing is illegal. Okay. So you can't invest in your own syndication. Now, I do know a lot of syndicators and the national director of syndicators who, what they do is, they invest in another syndicator's deal, and that syndicator invests in their deal for the same amount of money. Now the rub there is, which syndication does better, so you have to really trust that person. But yes, you can't invest in your own deal. I understand it's a frustration point. But we didn't make that rule. The IRS made that rule. But you can't self-benefit like that.
Are there any other restrictions? And that really is a nominal restriction, considering all the other freedoms. I love the other freedoms that this provides with using the funds. So are there any other restrictions that someone, before we go onto some of the really great bells and whistles of it?
Yeah. You can't go buy a house and make it your vacation house. You have to be arm's length. You can't, those types of things. But really, if you just stay passive, provide capital for the deal, and let that money grow, then you'll reap the benefits for years to come.
That is fantastic. Now, on the bright side, one other thing is you cannot touch that money, right?
Correct. So
this is what I always tell myself: don't ever touch it. Don't let it transfer. So when I was doing some working with some cryptocurrency, I was definitely making sure I'm like,
Oh, yeah.
making sure accounts were aligned the right way. I'm like, don't ever go into my account, please, my personal account.
Right. No, absolutely. Yeah. You can't touch it to your 59 and a half, but, with the eQRP, there's a loan provision. There's a $50,000 line of credit that you have access to, active money. And so you can take out $50,000 or half of your plan, whichever one is less, at any point, and you use that for whatever. You can go buy groceries with that if you want to. It just has to be paid back to the plan within 5 years at a reasonable interest rate, which is 3 to 5%. The reasonable interest rate is such an IRS thing to say, but that's their, not mine. But it's 3 to 5% over 5 years, and you can invest that 50K originally in a syndication and get some active cash flow and just pay that $50,000 back over 5 years and be just fine. So you can have access to it.
Okay. And that's a good reminder. That was a good reminder for me, and that's great for people to hear as well. So, what are some of the other perks that would bring somebody here to an eQRP, converting more into a 401k versus a self-directed IRA?
Yeah, I love people, and I've had, I come from the corporate world, I come from the medical device world, so I've had all the plans, and so I know that I work with eQRP every day, so I am biased, but you never ever want to do certain things with an IRA. One of them being, anything involving debt or leverage. Okay, you never ever want to do leverage real estate or syndications or anything like that with an IRA. IRAs are great for stocks and bonds, but leverage real estate or anything involving debt, never. The reason being is because this really nasty tax called unrelated business income tax, and it's triggered by UDFI. So unrelated business income tax can be up to 37% on the profits from the leverage portion of the deal. Now, what I mean by that, let's just say you bought a property for 100K, 20 of that cash, 80% loan from the bank. 80% of that deal was leveraged. And if you bought this with your IRA, 80% of the profits are going to be subject to UBIT tax. And we're talking about thousands of dollars here. And so it's just not worth it. And it's just not worth it at all, because you're paying the government money that's, is a very unnecessary tax. And so with the eQRP, we live in a totally different tax code. And so a huge perk of being a part of the eQRP community is avoiding that tax and being able to keep all the profits and grow that money tax free. Now, I think while not paying thousands of dollars of tax is amazing, and I think that should be enough for people to want to never do leverage with an IRA. I think the number one differentiator with the eQRP is just our culture. I mean, you name the real estate professional or syndicator or podcaster, you name it, they're probably a part of either primary, secondary, or tertiary to our community. And we just have an unparalleled team of experts, of people who care. Okay. Of people who care about you holistically, not just numbers. I think that, our team is just unparalleled in terms of their desire to help you achieve financial freedom, whether that be from unlimited sessions, if you have an investment you look at, or, just to talk. A lot of people just need to talk. I talked to a lady last week that was just going through a really nasty divorce, and she just wanted to talk about a retirement situation and for somebody to actually listen to her. And unfortunately, with these big custodial companies, they don't care, that hurts my heart. And so I'm okay with spending an hour talking with somebody about a fractured relationship so that they can, have a better life. It's not just about finances with us. While our mission is to break financial shackles and to provide financial freedom, you can't, like you said earlier, you can't achieve financial freedom unless you have other things like freedom in your life, freedom from these burdens, freedom, from this weight on your shoulders. And so as a trained minister, it is my desire in life to help people. And so I just think, and this is not about me, but I just think going back to our team is just unmatched and unparalleled. And you name the syndicator or a professional, we can assist or help with anything. So I think that's the best thing about us as our people.
That's it. And it's absolutely true, because I know that you've been trying to return my phone call for like 3 days. And I've been like, every time I'm like, I can't talk right now. I can't talk right now. I was giving a presentation and I got a phone call. I'm like, oh, I can't talk right now. I forgot to put it on, do not disturb.
Yeah.
It's great. But, here's another component of that is that, Damien even, does a lot of contribution in the sense. I remember a year ago, and what was that? January of 2020, he launched, what was it? I feel terrible. I can't remember, but he was doing a program, and it was for free. It's like just these webinar sessions on, just getting control of your life. Cause it was more than getting control. What was it?
Decade by Design.
Yes. Thank you.
Very
Decade
good.
by Design literally changed my path, because, it was like, and I remember, I had so many hoops to make it to the first webinar that he offered. And I sat in my car in this really obscure spot while my kids were in their ski lesson, with my, just trying to listen and take notes and just apply. And I learned so many strategies. So it is so much more. I mean, it's so much more than just financial freedom, but it is, how do we give you freedom in other parts of your life? What else is weighing you down? And, for you and I, that faith component is huge. The foundation, not just huge, it's ginormous. I mean, it is the foundation to life. But some people, I think, don't even realize that they have that big faith gap, because they're so blinded by all the stings, if you will, almost like they were stung by a bunch of bees and they're trying to take care of that, and they're missing the fact that they gashed their leg and they're bleeding out. And so it's like, sometimes just alleviating some of those other burdens helps people see, like, oh, there's more. I can find this even greater freedom for all of life.
Yes, absolutely. It's one thing to provide financial freedom, but if you have this weight of guilt, or this weight of shame, or this weight of pain, you name it, weighing you down, that those are other shackles that need to be broken. And I think Damien's he does such a beautiful job with Decade by Design and with other webinars that he's done, but just I mean, if you watch one of them, you'll see we don't, it's not about money for us. Finances is a part of life. We need finances to provide opportunities for our family, for our kids, for ourselves, those types of things, to pay our bills. But there's a lot more to life than finances. Okay. We understand that finances are important, but designing your life around, freedom in general, can just really give you a sense that, Paul describes it as the peace that transcends all understanding. If you want that peace that transcends all understanding, then you have to set yourself free from all of those things. So that's a really good point, Julie.
Yeah, and I'd say, I'm just going to add on to that, the freedom comes when you just, through salvation, when you have Christ in your life, you're like, I don't have to have that shame. I don't have to have that guilt. I don't have to have any of that. And all of a sudden, you don't have this load in your life that's been bogging you down. It's like, oh, I can smile. I can be free. This is great.
Absolutely. Julie, it's funny you mentioned that. I'm going to try not to get choked up, but my son accepted Jesus as Lord and Savior last week, and me and my wife were able to lead him. We were able to lead him to Jesus, and I'm going to be baptizing him on Easter Sunday, and I'm not going to be able to control myself that day, but just hearing him talk about Jesus and dying on the cross for his sins, and providing him with freedom from death and freedom from darkness and all this types of stuff. I'm like, man, where is like, where has my faith been over the past 30 years when I see this childlike faith that Jesus talked about all the time, and you don't really, and then I got to see it right there in my son. Like, just shredded me, just shredded me. And I totally agree with you. That freedom that comes with Jesus, it gives us the ability to, as First Peter 5:7 says, to cast all our anxiety on him because he loves us. That verb in Greek, for cast, is literally, huck, like literally throw it as far as you can away, because Jesus took that away. Jesus died on the cross for you. And I just think it's beautiful. And I got to see it, right there for my almost 8-year-old son. And I'll never forget that night. I'll never forget it. It was one of the best nights of my entire life. And it's the biggest decision he will ever make in his life. So just so thankful for it.
And it's amazing, the powerful rudder. And now some people listening may have had some experiences in through religious systems of any sort, where you just feel overwhelmed by rules and regulations, and I have to act this way and do this and that and the other, and it's just burdensome. And I know many people that have been in different settings where I am being careful because I want to mind my words, but where they end up feeling guilty and everything. It's like, that's how you can instantly know if you have repented of that. If you've gone from that, then you instantly know, I'm not in the right place, or I wasn't in the right place, because that's not what Jesus is about, and that's not what he brings. And so I just want to encourage anyone, if you are listening and you're like, well, I've had this terrible experience and everyone makes me feel terrible, well, that's a good indicator that you haven't seen a real Jesus.
Absolutely. The first, line of the book Jesus Freaks, and I don't know if you ever read Jesus Freaks, about the martyrs throughout the world, that was written by DC Talk about 20 years ago. But the first line in that book is, the number one cause of atheism in the world is Christians who say they're Christians and don't act like Christians. And so I want to reiterate what Julie just said. If you have, I apologize for people who have misrepresented who Jesus is. And I want you to know that is the real Jesus who God sent for us, is so much more than anything that I can ever describe. And, you feel free to reach out to me or Julie, and we'll tell you about him, just because I want to tell the world, I want to shout it from the rooftops. I want to be a city on a hill. And so just please know that, your life is not meant to be lived in shame or fear or pain, and that there is someone that came to this earth and lived a perfect life and died on the cross for you, so that you could experience the freedom from all of that. So.
And that freedom, I'm going to just take that a step further and even say I had the best 2020 ever. and I feel bad. I almost feel terrible saying that, except that I know why I had a really great 2020. And despite everything taking place with the pandemic, I was really focused and intentional. I was really focused and intentional on saying, this is out of my control, but it's completely within God's control. And as I look back over my life, I just see how God has provided and cared for me, even when things were dicey and difficult.
Yes.
I always say, you see God show up when your toes touch the water. He shows up all the time, but wow, you really get those wow moments when you're like, oh, this looks really bad and scary. And then you put your toes in the river because you're right there in the scary situation, and God's got you. And that made my 2020, gave me the freedom and the ability to be able to lean into everything that I believe that my purpose is right now in life. And so it's like, well, I don't need to worry about, it's almost, like within your household, well, I don't need to worry about going to get the milk because, somebody else is going to go grab the milk, right? My husband's going to grab it. My wife will grab it. It's the same thing, like, okay, I don't need to worry about all the things that are happening in the world right now. God's got that, but this right here is my responsibility and this is my part. And so playing that role, and it just keeps that focus and that momentum. It really leads to a vibrant, adventurous life.
Absolutely. You know, and your word of intentionality is, it hits the nail on the head. That's what I learned in 2020 is I learned to be more intentional with those who are, closest to me, and just to be intentional with every single part of the day. 2020 taught us a lot of things. It taught us that we have way too much excess in life, that we need to, I tell people when I meet with couples to lead them through premarital counseling, and they talk about their stressors, and I'm like, all right, well, let's talk about what all is on your plate. And then they tell me, and I'm like, okay, you need to cut out about half of that. It
Right.
doesn't matter, those things that are causing you stress and pain and anxiety, um, have zero, you know, impact on, life, the people around you, other than negativity. And so just cut it out, cut the fat out, and live a life of more happiness. And so I learned, pretty early on in 2020 that we just have, I'm not talking about stuff, but just talking about just too much excess stress, too much excess, anxieties, all those types of things. So we learned to simplify things and to really be intentional about that, and to be intentional with our relationships. Because if the devil can't make you bad, he'll make you busy and he'll make you complacent. And so what pre-pandemic, a lot of times you'd hear, Christians and non-Christians talk about how busy they were, and their focus was all over the place. Well, the pandemic happened, and you couldn't say that you were super busy anymore. And so what happened? How did people pivot? And how we pivoted was, what, those things that we were saying we were busy with didn't matter. What matters
Yep.
is mine and my wife's relationship, my relationship with my kids, my relationship with my Lord, and my relationship with my colleagues, and my relationship with my clients, and just people, and hashtag others. I just really think that, being intentional with people in general is just such a great mantra in life, because, Jesus was the ultimate intentional person. And if we can live a life of intentionality, then I think when we get to the end of our journey, he'll say, well done. So
And as we kind of wrap things up, I'm realizing, goodness, we're having a great conversation. I'm not honor your time. A lot of this will come. So if you're listening to this and you're wondering, and I will say, it doesn't matter what your belief system is. If clarity in life, you can really simplify your life.
agree.
You probably have a ton of excess, and I'm regularly doing this with my schedule. Like, did I just commit to another thing? Uh-oh. And then I have to send a message or make a phone call and say, I'm sorry, I overcommitted. And I catch myself a lot faster now. Really making sure, if you know what you're about, if you know what your purpose is and what's driving you, if you're clear about that, then you are able to make the best yes or the best no. I just read recently, say no before you say yes. Say no and then convince yourself to say yes. And I'm thinking that's a brilliant.
Brilliant. It's brilliant. You know,
But
I know you're trying. I know that we're wrapping up, but what I've found, um, in relationships, in business, in, I mean, basically every aspect of my life, and it's like a dream of mine to do a TED talk on this, but is, if you can manage expectations in everything, relationships, business, everything, if you can learn to master expectations, then you have succeeded. And so the saying no before the yes will keep you from over promising and under delivering. We always need to either promise and deliver, or under promise and over deliver. It should never ever be an overpromise and underdeliver. Because if we overpromise and underdeliver, then we have let people down. And if we don't manage people's expectations, then we have failed. And so I give the example all the time that, I used to be on staff at a church, but now I'm in, I call it the real world. And uh, the expectation when you're on staff at a church is to talk about Jesus. You're going to talk about Jesus. The expectation for being a national director of a finance company is not to talk about Jesus. And so when I get an opportunity to talk about Jesus, then that blows people's expectations, because their expectations were, he just wants to talk about money, or he just wants to talk about, retirement or something like that. And so I have changed their expectation. And the only time, if you look throughout history, the only time true change has been made, positive or negative, is when expectations were either exceeded or undermet. And I really believe in that. And so I just think that if positive change is going to happen, then we have to meet and exceed people's expectations in what we say we're going to do and what we promise. So.
I completely believe that. There was something else that led me to think, and that is, I know, when I think about, a lot of people have an aversion, or it could be a misbelief of mine, but there's this growing aversion of, well, I don't want anything to do with church or with a religion, and I'll have my own religion, or I'll do church on my own, in my own self, at my own house or wherever. And we automatically are saying no. So on the flip side, you also have to give yourself permission to say yes. And what does that yes look like? And I'm really adamant about saying no to this. But when's the last time I reevaluated why I'm saying no? And what would it look like if I said yes? What if I could have that freedom? So I think that we can be entrenched either way. So I'm like, I love how I'm contradicting myself, basically. Like, say no and then yes.
No,
but
it really,
it really is.
It's great stuff.
Now I'm narcissistic because I just complimented myself. This is a great way to end the show. Justin, I appreciate you. I appreciate that, you live out your faith in what you are doing, and, charting a different path and setting some different expectations, for people who are loving Jesus and following Christ. If people want to get a hold of you, how would they do that?
Yeah, absolutely. You can email me at Justin, Justin, at E as in Echo, Q as in Quebec, R as in Romeo, P as in Papa, .co. So Justin at eQRP.co. And if you just want general information on the eQRP, text the 4 letters eQRP to the number 72,000. So 72000. Just text the word eQRP to 72,000. And that'll send you the Cliff Notes of our book, which I love Cliff Notes. I don't even know if teenagers know about Cliff Notes these days, but it's the
Google. It'll send you the.
It'll be the Google, yeah. It's a simplified version of our book, and it's just the nuts and bolts of what the eQRP is. But even if you don't want to talk about the eQRP and you just want to shoot me an email and just ask me a question about my faith or about anything, just reach out to me or reach out to Julie, and she can reach out to me. I'm here to serve you, and she's here to serve you. And I just appreciate the honor of coming on, Julie.
Thanks so much, Justin. My awesome audience, thank you. This is a different episode, and I think it's good for us to always grow and stretch. And I absolutely believe all the time that challenging what we believe, why we believe it, why are we making the choices we're making in life? Why have I said yes to this and no to that, or no to this and yes to that? So, really, this is a thought-provoking episode, and I hope it gets you to think deeper about what you are believing and why you're believing it, and how that is flowing out of you, because something is coming out of you, whether you know it or not. Like, we are all giving something off of us in the world. And so, understanding what is flowing from your heart out to the world is really powerful. And that's a powerful tool to finding your freedom. So until next time, you're one step to finding your freedom. Thanks so much for joining me for another episode of Ask Me How I Know. This episode was brought to you by 3 Keys Investments. They are dedicated to helping people like you, you, my awesome listeners, develop passive income and legacy wealth through multifamily investing. Feel free to check out their website, 3keysinvestments.com, to see if there's an offering that will help your portfolio grow and meet all of your needs. If you haven't already rated, reviewed, subscribed, liked, all of those bells and whistles, I would be absolutely honored if you would do that for Ask Me How I Know. Thanks again, and go make it a great day.